Hey guys, so here I'm going to show you how to bake your ambient occlusion. Now, the ambient occlusion, a lot of people wonder what that is and how that works, is basically self-shadowing on objects. It allows you to see the depth of them. You can see a contact shadow as well as shadows overlapping each other. Um, the good example, well, it first came upon the scene during that term is used because of photography. You'll get ambient occlusion on your shadows of your objects. But as we get into 3D, it became important to actually try to, as things got a lot better graphically, to try to capture that whole self-shadowing that an object will have to get a little more believability to it. And so what we're going to do is going to bake a default. Now you can bake with pre-existing lights in the scene. You just have to make sure that there's no moving lights, and if there is, it may make your ambient occlusion look a little weird. So we're going to bake in some self-shadowing on this object, and then we're going to combine it to the texture. And we're going to use Maya, which is one of the better ways to create an ambient occlusion. Another way you can use is also XNormal. And Mudbox's new features, which we'll go over in class, allows you to bake pretty efficiently, pretty thoroughly when it comes to ambient occlusion. Alright, so we got this little guy here. So what we're going to do here is go into under rendering, lighting and shading, and we're going to go in here and we are going to bake batch bake, that's right. Open it up. We're going to do single object 1024. We're going to keep it Targa. And you can even bake in alpha if you wanted to. We don't want to do that. And so we're going to have it for selected. We're going to have it to the texture. We're going to do a single object. You can do vertices, but we're not going to go over in this case. Perspective is fine. Use bake set override. Now you want to turn this on. This allows these settings to turn on because by default this is not on. And when you're in this area, you want to turn on occlusion. You want to set your occlusion raise to, I'm going to set mine to 90. Surface front is fine. Now you'll see a fall off limit. This is basically how much your shadow is going to depreciate as it goes away from the hotspot of the light. In our case, the default is fine. Put 0, so you can actually control that, which is nice. I'm going to put a prefix of baked wow and 1024 by 1024. Now if we go into Photoshop, you'll actually see these are my earlier bakes here. Let me find out where he's at. If I open up, I think it's still in here, bake wow. If I open this up, you'll see the ambient occlusion. We'll say update. We'll see the ambient occlusion of the one that I created, and we're going to combine him to this guy here. And to do so, what we're going to do is use a multiply. But let's go ahead and run the bake so you can actually see what it looks like. So I'll say convert. Oh, gotta make sure I grab it first. My bad. Try that again. Convert and close. Down below, Maya will run. Now, if you have multiple objects, because you have that option, you might want to turn some of these settings down. You see it gives you the little self-shadowing. See? Pretty cool. Not too bad. Let's go back a few steps, get back the texture in there, because we're going to update that texture in just a second. So back into Photoshop, there is our little bake. This bake we're going to combine with our existing texture. So I'm just going to grab him. I'll just pull him away in Photoshop. And I'm going to actually make it easier on myself, so I don't have to just drag and drop it. I can just select it. And I love this about Photoshop. One of the newer features since CS5 is you can copy, and we can paste in place under paste special. Oh, geez. I guess my resolution is 2048 on my original deal. Let me see. Is it 2048? Yep, 2048 by 2048. Well, let's actually make a new bake. There's an easy fix for that. So let's go and open up our baking options. And we'll do 2048. Gotta put a 2 in there. By 2048. Why not make it a better party of occlusion? And we'll hit convert and close. So it's giving us a little warning because it's having a hard time kind of processing our render data. Baked Targa. Just output data type RGB not directly supported by image format Targa. And we can change that to TIFF if we need to. It'll still give us our output, but we're not needing really RGB. We just need the black and white elements here. And now we go back into here. Go back to this. Let's open up our baked wow. Much bigger. And yes, update. Let's back off a little bit. Oh, looks like it did a strange 0 to 1. Let's check it. Check out the options. I don't remember changing it. Yeah, I shouldn't have stretched that out. That was a little weird. We can fix that though. So we'll just do this post. And open it up again. And we'll just grab this guy. Let's go to his image size real quick. Yeah, that's weird because it's not set like that. And you saw it, you're my witnesses. Okay. Let me back up. Now grab it. There you go. Copy. And we'll do paste in place. And what we're going to do now is we're going to multiply this guy. Let me get rid of this old one. Don't need him. And we can multiply. And you'll notice there's a lot more depth that happens with this. And you can see when I turn it on versus off, you'll see that shadow line, which is really nice. I can flatten this guy. I'm going to put him on the desktop right now. Breaking my own rules here. Save. And we're going to reload it on our FBX file. Don't really have to break connection. I can just load it automatically. And we'll go to desktop. There he is. Open. Pretty good. And you'll see that the darkness is on there, which is kind of nice. The little shadowing, which is in there. You'll see even when I change the angle, the shadow doesn't really go away. And that's the cool thing about using ambient occlusion. You can get some nice depth to your objects. Another example of how this works, so you can actually see it a little bit better, because that's just a very slight example. Let's go and open up a recent one that I have called, let me see, Village of the Damned. Let's go and get this guy. Don't save this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this dude here. We're going to use him as our guinea pig. And we're going to show you, you're going to see a little bit more detail how that ambient occlusion bake works. Let's go and unwrap him generically. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have UVs. Let's double check here. Nope, he doesn't have any UVs. So one way you can actually go in here, what I like to do or use when it comes to UV unwrapping is automatic map, especially for something a little bit more complicated. Now, automatic map can get nasty, as in like get a little bit crowded, but you can go in here and you can change it, and it always needs editing. It does do scale and silhouette pretty darn good, and all you need to do is just go in here and quickly stitch it together, and we'll quickly go over that real fast here. Let me do project. There we go. And our settings in there, if you kind of missed that, let's go back in there real quick. Automatic map. You can choose 6 planes in here. I did less distortion, so it keeps the silhouettes a little bit better. Into the square, so into my 0 to 1. And everything else is right on the money. And spacing preset is 1024, and you can increase that if you want. So I'm going to close that out. Let's go to UV texture editor. Now, one thing you do need to do, and I want to mention this really quickly, is when you do unwrap anything with automatic map, you want to go in here and stitch these guys, but watch out for the hard corners. Now let's go and grab these edges here, and I can do move and sew. I can do another edge here and here, move and sew. And you'll want to keep these corners open, because if you stitch these, that's going to become an irregular angle, and Maya won't know how to deal with it. your texture will be displayed weird. Now, if I grab these guys here and say, alright, that's great, Sean's really cool, I'm going to do what he said, and move in so, you're going to get a distortion here. Let me do undo. You'll see that top point stretch back into place. See that? So you don't want that. So what we want to do is find out where this guy is located, where his partner is, and hit the F key. You can usually find out in what location they're at, these two guys up here. I'm going to right click and go to edge, grab that edge, and I'm going to cut it using the separate UVs tool. So now grab this, and then now do move and so. Oops, my bad. Control C. It's this guy down here. There you go. Now do move and so. And you'll see that they're split apart. See that broken apart? And that's kind of what you want for all these windows. Keep in mind that, again, the automatic map will keep things pretty to scale, but you need to decide based on your angle, what kind of game it is, how much real estate is going to be seen. Now, if this was an RTS, you would want a little bit more roof, and then you would have the face of the building. You don't want to neglect the face totally, but the roof would be a decent size. What we have here actually might work. But these little pieces all need to be stitched to their friends and partners so they're not all shattered and broken apart. Now in some cases when they're real little, nobody sees them, I just move them off to the side and don't worry about them later on. If you're going to take them into Mudbox though, you have to make sure everything still fits into 0 to 1. So we're not going to go through all this stitching. I go over it in several different videos. We don't need to do it here, but we're going to keep this for what it is. And now let's go into our bake. Or go to our batch bake mental array. And the reason why I'm using this guy too on a second round is because I want you to see how distinct your shadows can be and how nice actually this can turn out. We're going to do it on selected, pretty much the same settings we had before, and convert and close. Now Maya is still having little problems. It doesn't like the Targa because it doesn't have enough RGB information, which is fine because we just need the black and white information right now. It's thinking that we're going to relate a texture to this guy, and we're whoring this out for what we need. And look at that. That's actually does a pretty darn good job. Look at the shadowing compared to his brothers next to him. Not too bad. And it keeps it white where the light or the default's hitting that particular object. And again, if you can, if you want, set up your lights ahead of time. If you do, you got to be careful about that. So if I had a direct directional light and I had a few other lights in the scene bouncing around, I even had global illumination, because you can bake it into those same settings. I could choose global illumination too. But using ambient occlusion, remember, it's going to grab the light and the shadows and try to bake them in according to what you have in the scene. So if you have a direct one, you got to make sure that there's not going to be any lights going to interact with that object. Otherwise, it'll throw the player out of, it'll take them out of the suspension of disbelief. They won't feel that that object actually is in that 3D space, and you don't want that to happen. So you just got to think ahead of time. Stuff in the background could have a direct lights baked in. Stuff that are in the foreground, you can actually just do default light, and that way it's just kind of universally baked, and then from there you can let the real-time light do its job. All right, that's about it, and hope you enjoyed it.